Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash and happy Halloween. Welcome to another week of NFL predictions. Here we are at week 9. Last week we went 11-5, as you can see above. So we're still doing well, getting a lot of them correct, and hopefully we can keep that pattern moving as we move into November. Already 2 months into the NFL season. So, starting off, we've got a Thursday night matchup, Halloween matchup. Texans going to New York to play the Jets. Texans have been looking very strong. I was initially concerned about how they would bounce into this second year. Maybe that they overachieved last year under CJ Stroud, a rookie quarterback and rookie coach. But they've actually shown that they've probably more improved than anything. Now, there was the sad news that Stefon Diggs is out for the year, I think for an ACL injury. But I think there's still a lot of strengths with this team. And on the other side, the Jets, it's really tough to see the Jets struggle with the amount of talent it seems like they have on offense, right? When you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a solid running back in Breece Hall, and you got all those wide receivers, you feel like they could have success, but it just hasn't clicked for them. And I think this is another big challenge for them that they're not going to be able to deal with. So they're going to end up having another issue here, and I do think the Texans can go in, get a solid win. That would put them to 7-2 for the season, which is a pretty solid place to be. They could be anywhere within the top 3 seeds of the AFC when it's all said and done. And for the Jets, that puts them at 2-7. A mountain to climb if they're looking to do anything with the playoff picture at all. They're going to have to go on a significant run, and at the moment, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So, Texans getting the win here. Next up, we've got the Patriots. Patriots did well last week to get a win over the Jets, and the Titans, unfortunately, had a very tough game against, was it Detroit? Just confirming here, that was... Detroit Lions went out into Detroit and didn't have a good time, and I think the struggles are going to continue there. They're kind of in a transition at this point. You know, I think they've switched now to Kenny Pickett as their main guy, and really just trying to see what they have. I think at this point they're probably going to be shopping for a quarterback if they're near the top end of the draft, that's kind of where they're at. And I think Drake May has seen some good promise at New England, and I think they're going to do well enough to go out and get their second win in a row, and they'll feel pretty confident moving into the rest of the schedule. So a second win for them. Now, again, that we're still looking at that and being reasonable that the Patriots are going to be at 3-6. I don't think their goals pushing forward is really for playoffs, but it's something to build towards. Next, we have a nice AFC East matchup. We've got the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Bills have been solid this year, 6-2. There's been some dips in how they played, but again, looking like a solid team as ever. The Dolphins, again, they've struggled, but that's been without Tua. Tua being back last week, they looked a little bit more themselves, but still had a tough loss against the Arizona Cardinals. I still think, and this was my initial prediction at the beginning of the year, that the Dolphins are going to take a little bit of a step back, even if Tua was healthy for the entire year and wouldn't have made the playoffs. I still think that's the case. I think they aren't necessarily going to be competing at the same level as they did last year, even with Tua in there. So I am giving the Bills the win here. And again, at home, it's maybe getting a little bit colder now in Buffalo. You're going to see then potentially the Dolphins struggle with that as well. So I am giving the Bills the victory in this one. Next, we have the Vegas Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, up against the Cincinnati Bengals. So in this one, again, two teams that are looking to put another win on the board, moving themselves closer to 500. The Bengals, when I look at the Bengals and see, is there a path for them to push their way into the playoffs? I think there is. But this would be a game you have to put on in the win column. I don't think you can let this slide and then feel like you're going to be able to go on a run to make it into the playoffs. And so if the Bengals can win here, that puts them at 4-5 and gives them a good shot at the playoffs. Otherwise, I think it's an uphill battle. If they're going to think going 3-6 for the first 9 games, they're going to then be able to bounce back, right? Even with a 9-7 record, like 10-6 means they have to then win the entire way through, which I think would be tough. So this has to be a must win for the Bengals if they have any hopes of pushing for the playoffs this year. I am going to give them the slight edge. I think they are trending in the right direction to then get a win, but the Raiders are tough, right? They regardless of their record, they played well against the Chiefs to have it as a 7-point game, so they are certainly not a write-off in this one. But I am going to put it out on there that the Bengals are going to get the victory. Next, we have the Denver Broncos going to Baltimore to see if they can get a win against the Ravens. The Broncos are doing decently well this year, currently sitting at 5-3, which poises them in a good spot to be in a position for playoffs as long as they can kind of maintain their presence. But this is a tough game. Even though Baltimore lost to the Browns last week, I still see the Ravens as being a top quality team in the AFC, and it's going to be tough to beat them in back-to-back weeks. And so I'm going to see, I think Baltimore is going to win this one. I think Denver could certainly make it close. If it's a case where Denver can go into a game like this and get the win, that would be huge for them. I think that would really cement the Broncos as an opportunity to push. They should be pushing for playoffs, and that should be their goal moving forward. Especially when you see maybe the struggles of teams from the AFC East, the AFC South teams maybe aren't at the same position either. That I think the Broncos could sneak into the playoffs. But in this case, they're going to drop to about 5-4 with a loss to the Ravens. And our last matchup of AFC teams is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Cleveland Browns. The Chargers are kind of interesting to me. I don't really know where to put them. They're currently 4-3, but it seems like they're a team that they're going to win the games that they are planning to. Like, it's not that there's many surprises, but teams that have a little bit more aspiration. So like 2 weeks ago, losing to the Arizona Cardinals was maybe a little bit more surprising, and so a close victory against the Broncos. So there's still a lot of things that they have to work out. I'm curious as to how they're going to play against Cleveland. I think with Jameis Winston with the Browns, it's kind of that new sense of life that the Browns have, similar to when Joe Flacco stepped in, that they really went on a run and it helped them get the playoffs. It might be too little too late for them to be in the playoffs, but I think they're going to go out and give people a good game, and I think Winston is the guy that can support them through that. So they did well to get a nice home win against Baltimore, and I think they could now get a second home victory. And again, that's not to say that they could go on a run, but sitting at 2-6 currently, that's going to be tough for them to really push for the playoffs. But they can show some good signs that this is still a good team, just maybe not having the quarterback leadership at the beginning of the year to make it happen for them and push for the playoffs. So I have the Browns winning this at home against the Chargers. As we move further down, we have some inter-conference matchups. The first one we have here is the Colts going out to Minnesota. Colts, again, has made the decision based on kind of some performances that Anthony Richardson is sitting and Joe Flacco is going to be starting this game. That's, for me, a big surprise, especially when you look at how little Anthony Richardson has actually played with being injured all of last year. And then, maybe the 7 or 8 games that he's had now. That's really surprising that they're deciding to make a change so quickly. There might be other things that go on with that. I know that their head coach said it was nothing to do with that scenario where he was pulled out because he was tired. I don't think there's anything to do with that, but we'll see what Joe Flacco can do. Again, in the starts that he's been decent, but isn't necessarily, radically changing this team. The Vikings are an interesting spot right now because they had such a good run, and now they've lost 2 in a row. So is this Vikings team for real? In that, can they bounce back? Can they start then, working on the things that got them to this point? Or is it a case where then the first part of the season was a flash in the pan and now they're going to start struggling like we would expect them? I'm hoping that they don't. I think the Viking story with Sam Darnold is a great thing to see. So I am going to give the Vikings the benefit of the doubt, plus maybe a little bit longer rest because they played on Thursday night, that they can go at home and get a win and get back into winning ways for them. Next, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars up against the Eagles. And one thing about the Eagles to notice is after their bye, so they had lost to Tampa Bay and then they had a bye week. They've now kind of been undefeated since that. And I think they've found something and they're riding that momentum at the moment. And even though I was probably doubting some of the things that Philly could do, I think the Eagles are going to be decent and be able to go on a run. They could then be pushing Washington for the division title or at least position them well in the playoffs. But I have confidence they're going to come and win this game. Jacksonville, I think, again, there's been lots of struggles, right? They've only won 2 games. They're 2-6, right? That's probably out of a position where they can push for playoffs at this point. But there's been so many games that they've been within 1 touchdown. And so I feel like there's just 1 or 2 things missing that to get them over the edge. I don't know if that's, a certain amount of character or, some different adaptations of plays towards the end of the game. So I'm not sure what that is, but I feel like they're so close to then being a solid team. But I am going to give the Eagles a win. I don't doubt if Jacksonville gives the Eagles a good game here, but probably comes up short, maybe by 7 or 3 points. So I am going to give the Eagles the victory here. Next, we have the Buccaneers on Monday night going out to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. And for the Buccaneers, I think they're in a tough spot. They've been hit with injuries. Losing Mike Evans and probably for a couple more weeks is going to be tough. Missing Godwin for the entire year, that's going to be tough as well. But seen from their game, it seems like Baker's been done well to find their tight ends and be able to make significant plays, and I think they did well despite the loss against Atlanta to make that a decent game. However, going against Kansas City, I think there's going to be struggles. Kansas City, by far, to me, seems like the best team, where then they haven't really seen many faults at this point, and if they do, there's enough quality elsewhere in the team to make a difference. And so if not everyone's up to the par, Kansas City finds a way to win, and I think they continue to do that. There could be something said about they could be going all the way with an undefeated season. We'll see about that. There are some tough games coming up that I'll be curious of how they match up, but I do see Kansas City getting the win here. It's tough for Tampa. That's going to put them at 4-5, which I see them as a better team than a below 500 team. And it'll be interesting to see if they can push their way into playoff contention or division contention as we go later in the season, despite all their injuries. Next, we go into the NFC, and we have a NFC East matchup where the Commanders are going out to New York to face the Giants. This one's interesting because the Commanders have been playing well, right? The big win that they had against the Bears on that Hail Mary, again, a lot of luck involved, but when you're playing well, sometimes luck rolls your way, and a big win for them to put them 6-2 and still leading the division. I always say that division matchups are a little bit more difficult. There's, sometimes teams and players bring a little bit more to it, but I do see the Commanders winning this. Giants at 2-6, there are going to be some areas where they can be successful. Malik Neighbors is a great wide receiver and has done well this year. Dexter Lawrence on the defensive line to be leading the league in sacks is pretty astonishing stat, especially for an interior defensive lineman. But I do see the Commanders going out and getting the win here. I'd be very surprised if there is a win the other way. I think if the Commanders are wanting to continue to push to get a division win, they have to be able to take games like this, and I do believe that they can get the win here. The next matchup we have is an interesting one where we have the 5-3 Atlanta Falcons hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys sitting at 3-4. Are certainly below expectation, especially for where they had finished in the playoffs last year. It's interesting, what's going to happen moving forward. They played well, I think, against the 49ers, but it is one of those where, if you keep losing some of those games, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, and maybe it's a scenario where then you don't have the quality and the wins you need at the end to push for playoffs, which I think would be a very big surprise for the Cowboys. Falcons, again, 5-3. They got a good win against Tampa Bay, and to have the both wins against Tampa is going to be key for them holding on to the NFC North title, or I guess gaining it this year. But there are some inconsistencies there too. They had a big loss against Seattle 2 weeks ago. So when I looked at the schedule this week, this is probably the most difficult one for me to predict because I feel like both of these teams can be very up and down. I eventually it's almost near a coin flip, but I eventually went with the team that does have the better record and has kind of a little bit more momentum with a win under their belt. So I'm giving Atlanta the win. But I would not be surprised if Dallas could come in and get the win here. This will be good for the Falcons if they can go 6-3, start asserting a lead over Tampa Bay in the division. Cowboys, if they drop to 3-5, there's going to be lots of questions whether if Mike McCarthy is going to stick around, if there's other changes that need to be made in order for this team to be successful, especially with a fair bit of talent that they have on that team. But I am giving the Atlanta Falcons the win. Next, we have an NFC South matchup with the Saints and the Panthers. Good news for the Saints is it sounds like Derek Carr will be ready and coming back in this game. They've been, again, Saints started out well, but when Derek Carr went down, then Spencer Rattler and other quarterbacks that have filled in that position just isn't the same, and that's fair, and props to Derek Carr for how well he had done before his injury, and so I think him coming back is going to be a big boost for this team, and it's going to propel them to a victory. I might have given this a little bit more thought if it was not Derek Carr, and maybe given a veteran leadership of Andy Dalton to go out and get another win at home with Carolina. But I do see the Saints getting the win here. I think, again, struggles are going to be the case for Carolina. I think Chuba Hubbard, as their running back, is having a decent season. But, it's going to be tough to get wins. This could certainly be one that is a win. As I say, division matchups sometimes there's a little bit more at stake, and you get a different kind of energy for it. but I do see the Saints going out and getting a victory here. Next, we have the Chicago Bears going out to Arizona to face the Cardinals. When I look at both of these teams, they give me the same energy in that they're teams that are aspiring to kind of push forward. Maybe it will be short of the playoffs, but if they can go on a run, they could make something happen. For the Bears, it's really tough for them to lose that one to Washington off of that ricochet from the Hail Mary, and it might be tough for them to then kind of come back after that and take on a tough Arizona team, which when you look at the standings, and I know that they're all close, being 4-4 is significant, but sitting atop of the NFC West is also significant. And I think Arizona this year could be one of those surprise teams that with some quality wins and maybe getting some wins in the division, they could push their way into a scenario where they are in the playoffs, depending on how some of the other teams finish out the year. So Arizona and Chicago, I think, are both decent teams. I am going to give the slight edge to the home team, Arizona. I think just being a little bit more what's the words I'm looking for? In form. I think they got a win last week. Let me double check that. Yeah, a good solid win with Tua's return to Miami, and then beat the Chargers. So I think they're going to continue their winning streak and make it 5-4, which, anything can happen then for Arizona. If they can push their way into the playoffs, that would be significant for them. Next, we have the Rams against the Seahawks. Rams did well on Thursday to go out and get a solid victory against Minnesota. And again, and I didn't mention this before, but maybe lucked out on that missed penalty on the face mask in the end zone. Again, there's lots of back and forth. Minnesota would still have to go all the way down the field to make a game of it. Not to say that they couldn't, but the Rams put themselves in a good spot. And I think with their injuries, so with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back in the lineup, they're going to have an opportunity where they can go on a run. They're still a quality team. They made the playoffs last year, and so there's the pedigree there. And I think if they can go injury-free, then that gives them an opportunity. For Seattle is an interesting one. They started off really well, but my predictions were still thinking that Seattle was going to struggle this year. I think they benefited from a favorable opening schedule, but as they get into some of these matchups, I do see them struggling, and I am going to give LA the victory here. LA is going to continue to move forward. I think they could be, if San Francisco still doesn't have all of their stuff together and sees some of the flaws in there, I think the Rams could be a surprise and become the NFC West winners. Again, Arizona's part of that conversation too now, but I think the Rams could go on a run here and make it tough for the 49ers to win their division. And finally, we have an NFC North matchup. We've got the Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers out in Lambeau Field. This one will be an exciting one because I think any of the games where we have the NFC North teams against each other, I think all of them have good quality, and I think all of them are going to come down to the last drive of one team or another. This is interesting. Like, again, you have Detroit going out and getting solid wins against Tennessee, getting that win to against Minnesota. But Green Bay, I think, has also looked very solid as well. Seeing Green Bay, who did they beat last week? They beat the Jaguars away from home. And then the week before that, I think they had the Texans and beat them at home. So these are good teams, and it's really hard to know the difference between these two. What I am going to do, and it's, that's maybe the crutch that I lean on when I don't know which team to pick. I am going to go for the home team here. So giving Green Bay the slight advantage and saying they're going to go and get a victory over the Detroit Lions. And again, I see all of these teams as quality teams. That's certainly a matchup that I'm going to be looking forward to watching over this weekend. So those are all of my predictions. You can go back and take a look at each of them. I'll scroll them up as we discuss here. But thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of the views that I have and the comments that are down below. If you have your own predictions, you can put them in the comments as well as like and subscribe, as that helps to grow my channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.